Okay, so we're starting here in Shinchet in the Beit Yosef. Um, Hadavarim, I'll just read a little bit. Hadavarim Muktzeh she'asurim l'taltel mitchalkim l'shisha chelekim. So there are 6 kinds of muktzeh. Harishon kli shehu muktzeh mechesron kis. Dahainu kli she'adam makpid alav shelo yifagem kagon. So there's a thing that you're careful about, that you don't want it to get a pagam, a blemish. Kagon sakin shel shchita umila v'shel sfarim. So knives for either shchita or mila or books. In other words, you maybe have to cut the pages of the book. You have to cut parts of it. Habesheni kli shemalak tol iser. So that's a kli that you use for an iser, like a hammer. Vashlishi kol davar she'eno kli v'lo ma'achal adam v'lo ma'achal behema kagon avanim u'ma'ot v'kanim v'eitzim v'korot v'afar v'chol v'met. Right, sand and a dead person, u'balei chayim, and also animals. The Rav Moshe says it doesn't include pets. It's talking about animals that are not commonly held in one's lap. V'grogrot v'tzimukim, and this is important actually, and figs and raisins, shemunachim b'makom shemiyabsham otam. Now, they used to put them on the roofs of their houses, let's say, to dry them out. And why are they muktzeh? They're food, after all. Why are they muktzeh? You guys tell me. Yeah, go. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Max.
I was thinking something about Hesach Hadat, that your plan is to dry them over the course of the day, and you're not gonna your plan is to they're not mina muchan. You're not thinking about them till you don't want them till after Shabbos.
Okay. Well, yeah. Even grapes take maybe many weeks to dry, so it's not even that day. You're in the middle of a process. It's kind of like, you have like wine. Let's say you're aging wine in a barrel for 6 months, and then if you want to drink it after 3 months, so you were planning on waiting 6 months. So it's in the middle. Of course, that's one opinion. That's one way of saying. Anybody else have anything you want to say?
There's a meus factor to it. So.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I was going to say you're not really interacting with them as an edible thing at all. Like that's a weird in-process slime that doesn't have any part of your Shabbos world.
That's what some of the Rishonim say like that. They say that it's in the middle. It's an intermediate stage. It's not a grape anymore, but it's not yet a raisin, and therefore it's like smelly and not good. You want it when it finally becomes a raisin, then you'll eat it. Okay, so these are things that are the third category of muktzeh, and he says the kol kiyotze. I mean, I just want to point out the difference. I just want to point out the difference. It's not just that I don't want to use it right now. It's that it's not usable. But devarim elu lo chazu, they're not fit for anything. V'zeo muktzeh machmat gufo. That's called, it's essentially muktzeh. Its essence is the object itself is unusable, and therefore it's muktzeh. And the fourth, kli shemalakto leheter. So wait a second, kli shemalakto leheter umunach alav echad me'advarim hamuktza'im machmat gufam. But something on top of it is muktzeh machmat gufo. Notice he doesn't say machmat chesron kis. That's very interesting, actually. He doesn't say machmat that's kli shemalakto le'iser. It's kli shemalakto leheter, but on top of it is something that's usher in its essence. So, like for example, you have a book, but you left your telephone on top of your book before Shabbat. So now the book is muktzeh. Of course, it doesn't matter that somebody moved the telephone, let's say, after Shabbat, but if at Bein Hashmasha the phone was, I'm assuming that phone is muktzeh. I mean, it could be you're a doctor and your phone is not muktzeh, but assuming the phone is muktzeh, then your book would be muktzeh the whole Shabbat. So that's the fourth. I'm just reading again. Munach alav echad me'advarim amuksaim machmat gufan kagon chavit sheyesh alav even v'kar sheyesh alav ma'ot. You have money on top of your pillow. Va'afilu husru achar kach kevan shahayu aleihem ben hashmashot migo de it katsu the ben hashmashot it katsu l'kula yoma. Since they were muktzeh at the beginning of Shabbos, they're muktzeh for the whole day. Very important principle. V'haheh. The fifth category, davar shehaya bein hashmashot mechubar or mechusar tzeda, something that was like an apple on a tree, or an animal that you were hunting but you didn't yet hunt it, or let's say on Shabbos, a wild turkey, I don't know, falls into your garden, and now it's Yom Tov, and you want to kill it to eat it. If you're allowed to do on Yom Tov, you're allowed to do shechita on Yom Tov. But you can't, because before Yom Tov, it was out of your garden. It was lacking capture. Now it has capture. Let's say, garden. I mean to say, let's say a very small garden. That's whatever would be the definition of being captured. It fell into your cage. Then you can't shecht it. And so to an apple, you can't eat it or you can't move it because it was mechubar before Shabbat. It was muktzeh before Shabbat. Muktzeh and the sixth category of shishi, muktzeh machmat mitzvato, kagon atzei sukkot v'noi, like the things of the sukkah, the decorations of the sukkah, which are, you're not supposed to move them on Shabbat or Yom Tov because you weren't going to. They're part of the mitzvah. They're part of the decoration. They're not something that you're supposed to take off at all. So certainly not move them on Shabbat.
Rav Nachum?
Yeah.
I think that category is not lav dafka Shabbat. That's just a category for like something like Shem and Chanukah, right? You can't use it at all. It's muktzeh for even like during the week for anything.
So you can't take the decorations off on all of Sukkot.
Yeah.
Fine.
It's katzeh. It's cut off from any other use or any other being. It's just supposed to be there. Therefore, then you have to find the heterim when your sukkah starts falling apart.
So first of all, I have a question. What two categories of muktzeh are missing from this list? He says he gave them all, but I can think of two that are missing. Can anybody else concur? Yeah, Max, go ahead.
Mius, right?
Oh, very good. Mius. Muktzeh machmat mius. We see that in the truth. Why do you think he missed that one? Or I didn't miss it. Why did he leave it out? What's special about muktzeh machmat mius? Well, Joel, what do you say?
Sometimes we say it only applies on Chag, and this is Hilchot Shabbos, right? So.
No, but so what?
But
Sukkah also.
Right. So it's not.
Oh, there's Muktzeh machmat mius that's during the week, or that's during Shabbos. It's nothing to do with Hanukkah. What does that have to do with Hanukkah?
Not with Hanukkah. No, machmat mius is a debate about whether it applies on Shabbos or only on. Right. It's a debate between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. And we paskin like Rabbi Shimon that it doesn't apply. I think
about oil lamps.
No. Yeah. Exactly. That's machmat mius. So.
Are there other case? Well, fine. Fine. Okay, that could be a reason. In other words, it's not mentioned in Gemara in the context of Shabbos. It's mentioned only. Tosfos mentions it though in the context of Shabbos, and that's what I was thinking. Basically, what you're saying is what I was thinking, that it's not really mentioned in the Gemara in the context of Shabbos, right? It is mentioned in Tosfos. What's the other? What's the eighth one? Can anyone think of an eighth one? This one is mentioned. Muktzeh machmat Isser. Muktzeh machmat Isser. What's an example of machmat Isser? Yeah, Mim?
Like a mortar and pestle that you'd only use for grinding in a way that's like.
No, that's it's Kli Shemalach Isser.
Oh, yeah, damn.
Well, I'm talking about Muktzeh machmat Isser. Example is.
Oh, like Hekdesh?
I don't know. I'm not sure. That's not the example I'm thinking. I don't know.
Okay, I don't know. An idolatry item then.
As I say, treif.
No, the example is like a candelabra with a candle burning on it. Like, let's say you have a candlestick with a candle on it, and then a flame on it. So the flame itself is muktzeh machmat isser because you can't light it on Shabbos. So it's like an isser. Or like another example would be like an animal that a nevela. It would have been forbidden to kill the animal on Shabbat, but it died itself on Shabbat, and it's a nevela now. So you can't feed it to your dog because it's, in order to have fed it to your dog, you would have had to shecht it, and you would have to kill it, and you can't kill it. You can't kill an animal on Shabbat. So it's muchma machmat isser. These are brought in Tosfot. Oh, this is brought in Tosfot. Joel, you're troubled.
That's the same category as mechusar tzida, right? Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe that's what he means by mechusar tzida is that. But what about the cancel? What about the candle? The candle wouldn't fit into that. It's not mechubar. The candle is also a whole discussion about moving a candle. So I don't know if it's, maybe I just gave, maybe that example was not the best example, but okay. So then the Beit Yosef goes on, and we're not going to read it, but he basically points out that he says maybe tefillin are muktzeh. I don't know why he brings this discussion right here, but then he brings this whole discussion of why is maybe tefillin are muktzeh, and then he has a line here: she'im yirtzei adam lahaniach tefillin b'Shabbat ein iser b'davar klal. He says really you could put on tefillin on Shabbat, so therefore they're not muktzeh. So that's his conclusion here. I don't know exactly what he's doing here, but it's very interesting discussion if you're interested in this question. So then he goes on, the Divrei Rabbeinu. You see where it says that? See where Divrei Rabbeinu? Sort of after that first paragraph there that I mentioned, which is Daled Aleph, actually. It's actually great. So it says, V'divrei Rabbeinu po, Eino ela ba'arba chelekim harishonim, aval b'chelek hachamishi diber b'hilchot Yom Tov. Because that's when you would kill an animal, really would be on Yom Tov. You know, that would be when it'd be relevant to say, well, this animal you can't kill because it wasn't captured. See, Mechusar Tzeda is different from it being dead. Mechusar Tzeda is that you captured it, not that you killed it. So he says that one he's going to deal with on Yom Tov. And then B'chelik HaVav, B'chelik the sixth section, B'Hilchot Sukkah. So he's only going to deal with the fourth. And then he goes on and says like this: when we talk Divrav Po, Yitpaer L'cha Shemuksa Machmat Chesron Kis Ein Lo Tzad Heter L'Til Tulo. So this is a very important line. He says that Chesron Kis, there is no way you can move it, including everything. You can't move for any reason, Chesron Kis. Presumably, not even klachar yad min hatzad. Presumably, not even in a tarovet. You have a bag with, let's say.
They do end up giving some heterium for klachar yad.
Does the Beit Yosef specifically say that? I'm not interested in the halacha. I'm interested in what the Beit Yosef is saying. You can check that, but we'll see. Maybe there's different opinions about this question. But I'm just saying what he's saying here. There are people that want him medayek from the Beit Yosef here that's it. En lo tzad heter. Ach shloshet chelakim anisharim. But the other three, yesh tzadim heter, betiltul al yedei drachim shonot. There are different ways that you could possibly move them. Ki kli shemalachto leisser, for example, which is like a hammer, mutter l'tal telo l'tzor gufo. You could use it for its purpose, for its for its essence, which means like you want to hammer things. What would you want to hammer that would be mutter on Shabbos? You want to hammer nuts to open them up. V'letzorech mekomo, you could also move it. You could also move it because you finished hammering your nuts, and now the hammer is on the table. You don't want it on the table. You want to put it somewhere else. You can move it away because you want to put plates on the table. V'lo nezar ela machmat mechamal etzel. And the only thing you can't do with it is move it from the sun to the shade. What we're talking about here, that's a general term, mechamal etzel, to mean what?
Chesron Kis, right?
No, mechamal etzel, you can't move, even certainly not chesron kis, but it's also not klishim lachol iser.
We're using it as a general term for moving stuff in order to protect the stuff.
Exactly, protect the stuff. Your child throws your cell phone out the window on Shabbos. That's it. You can't move. You can't go and get it. You can't collect it because it's klishim lachol iser, or even chesron kis, possibly. And you can't move it to protect it, to get it. So somebody, I don't know, you threw your hammer out the window. You can't go get it. That's it. Even you're worried about Geneva, you can't. You could ask a goy maybe to take it for you, but that would be the case. I mean, I don't know what other cases. Yeah, any case, you left. You realize that your spouse left. Something valuable in the courtyard, and you're going to shul now, and you don't want, and no one's gonna be home, and you can't bring it in. For example. Okay, so that's the Beit Yosef here.
Are you going to explain why that makes sense, that the Chisron Kis would have no case in order to matir it? I don't totally understand the essence of Chisron Kis.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about that. Yes, I definitely want to talk about that.
You're going to come to it.
Definitely want to talk about that. So let's just get, I'm always debating whether everybody saw the Gemaras, right? We saw the Gemaras in Kuf Kaf Gimel and Kuf Kaf for the Dalit, I think I gave. But let's continue in the Beit Yosef. And I want to skip though now. Here. But yes, we have to talk about this question. If I forget to talk about it, I think I'm going to talk about it a lot. But if I forget to talk about it, remind me, Ori. Okay, so let's go to Aleph in the Beit Yosef. Somebody want to read? Where it says, Kol hakelim nitalim b'Shabbat. Okay, yeah, Jess, go ahead.
כל הכלים נתלים בשבת, חוץ מכלים שאדם חס להם, אולי? בפרק כל הכלים, זמן רבי יוסי אומר, כל הכלים נתלים בשבת, חוץ מן המסע הגדול, ויתד המחרשה, פירוש רש"י, משום דקפד עליהו, מחד להם מקום דלא חזו למלאכה אחריתה, ובפרק מישר החשיך, אמרינן שזה נקרא מוקצה מחמת חיסרון כיס, ואפילו רבי שמעון מודה, ובגמרא אמר רבי, חווה דאושקפה וסחינה דאשכבתא וחזינה דנגרי, תייצד שם אחרי שדמה. Page Rashi.
All right, wait, so stop.
Okay.
Let's break this down.
Okay. So you have in the Gemara that Rabbi Yossi teaches that all kelim are permitted to move except for the large saw and the pin of a plow. And Rashi says that's because these are things where you're going to be makpid about them, and you're going to make a special place for them, and they're not fit for any kind of other malacha. They only are used for
right. So what do you make of this? He gives like 3 parts to this. It's not just that they are. You're makpid. What does it mean? You're makpid alayu.
Like that you're particular about them, you're careful about them.
Right. Okay. And
The example of we talked about.
Sorry.
Yeah, the example we talked about in Michael Bruto is like a shechita knife, where there's no way you're going to use your shechita knife for, because you can't find a knife that's clean for your vegetables.
You're going to cut your cucumbers with your shechita knife or with your Brit Mila knife. You're not going to cut your cucumbers with a Brit Mila knife or a shechita knife because you might damage the blade a little bit. And it took you hours to sharpen it, to get it smooth and sharp.
And it doesn't even live with the rest of your knives in the kitchen drawer. It lives in your special shechita knife, I don't know, bag in the shechita knife drawer.
Nachum?
Yeah.
When you're Muktzeh, that means it never has a neutral status. A hammer, your big example, could have different statuses. Or it could just be lying there, and therefore it's machmas mokum if you want to move it and all that. But something, oh no, don't touch that. Right? When kids come to visit, don't touch that. Because your Muktzeh, it always has that specific status. And I would say Muktzeh, it's cut off from anything else except for what it needs to be used for.
Right. So that's the third thing that he says.
Right. Okay.
The lo chazul melacha achrita. That is the third thing is that it's not fit for any other melacha. I mean, I guess you could say that a shechita knife is kind of fit for cutting cucumbers, but it's not really fit for it. I mean, it's not the right tool, certainly. And it might damage it, so it's really not fit for it. And makpid, but makpid alai, so you're particular about it, and you're meyached lo makom. I mean, a shechita knife, you might not have a special place for it, but maybe you do. Maybe Rashi's saying it has to be that something you like come home and you put your knife in a certain drawer in a certain box. There's a little wooden box with some flax in there, and you put the knife very carefully and you close it up, and it has a special place, and you never use it for anything else, and you're makpid about it. So
a perfect example could be surgery tools. So like you have a surgery knife, you're not going to use it for anything else because there's all those other elements associated with using the knife, right?
Yeah. But the question is, Rashi says that you have to miyached lo makom. Let's look at the Rambam. Let me just get a Rambam and let's look at the Rambam. Now, where is this Rambam? I put it in my source sheet a few times. It's 25:9. I think it's there. Let's see. Yeah. So here, Jess, why don't you read Halacha Tet in chapter 25 in the Rambam?
כלי שמקפיד עליו, שמה יפתחה דמיו כגון כלים המוקצים לסחורה, הכלים היקרים ביותר, שמקפיד עלי הוא, שמה יפסדו, אסור לטלטלן בשבת, זהו שנקרא מוקצה מחמת חסרון כיס. וגם המס הגדול ויתד של מחרשה, וזקין של טפחים, וחרב של אושקפלים, וחצין החרשים וכונס של בסמים וכיוצא בהם.
Okay, so tell me the differences between what we've learned so far and the Rambam.
So Rambam tells you why Rashi's telling you the ways in which you're being makpid on them, and Rambam's telling you why you might be makpid on them. So he's saying it could be something where you're worried it will decrease in value. It could be things where you're worried they're going to get lost.
Get lost?
Is that not right? Sorry. Shema yifsadu. Maybe that's also
that means damaged. That means damaged.
Okay.
That means damaged. You have seed, like you have seed kesef. yifsadu. Something will be lost in them. I mean, you're right. You're, in a sense, you translate it literally. Yeah, you translate it literally, but it means there'll be a loss of value in the thing.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And
that's
what's the difference between his two?
But what would be the halachic differences? Are there any halachic differences?
One sec, just so I understand. What's the difference then between Yifchatu Damav and Yifsadu?
Oh, very good. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll ask you. There may be no difference, but what could be a difference? Maybe he's repeating himself.
Well, no, I thought the difference was that the second one went lost and the first one went lost and loss of value.
Well, anything could get lost. Anything could get lost. I mean, everything could be lost. So I don't know.
Everything can lose value, but
I think it might be a difference between something like going bad and / becoming completely worthless versus something its value lowering. I think Yifsadu is
like ruins.
Yeah.
Okay. I think they're more close in meaning than that. But what other category did he put in that Rashi doesn't have here? I mean,
craft person's tools, merchant's tools, like your professional tools.
Well, I think that would be included in Rashi. Rashi just said anything that you're careful that you only use it for its malacha, not for another malacha.
And then very expensive things.
You're right. Rashi didn't say that it's very expensive. You're right, but there's something also more standing out. Anyone?
Muktzeh and the schora.
Yeah, the schora. What does he mean by the schora?
It's something that might actually be something l'mlachta leheter, but you've prepared it for sale.
Exactly. It could be an item that's not so careful about it, but you're careful about it. Why are you careful?
Because you want to sell it.
And nobody will buy it if
it's been ruined or moved or...
No, well, if it's ruined, then it's in the other category. We're not worried. In other words, here we're not worried that... I think it's like this. You have in your machsan, your store, boxes of unopened, plates from Germany, and you sell them. You're a plate store. Now, if you would open those plates and use them on Shabbat, there would be, and then clean them and put them back in the box, there'd be no difference. You washed them; they're totally clean. But people would know that you opened it, and it would now become a secondhand item. People want a new item. You've turned it from new to used, even though the item is not. So it could be hammers. You took out the hammer from your hardware store and you used it, but now it's you wouldn't use. Or really, what the Rambam is saying is you wouldn't use it because you'll be afraid that an insignificant damage. This is the way I want to say it. You're afraid that an insignificant damage will occur to it, which is truly insignificant in the sense that nobody really cares, but nobody will buy it. Nobody will buy a hammer that looks scratched. Now, is a hammer that's scratched any worse than a not scratched hammer? No. It's not like a shchita knife. When a shchita knife gets dented, you have to fix it now. You don't fix a hammer because it's a scratch.
Jacob has a better example for you. Jacob, say your example.
Nobody's going to buy the product if the safety seal is removed.
Right. Safety. Yeah, exactly.
Which is and safety seals are nothing, seguridad, except that it shows it hasn't been used.
Right. But I also like my example. I want to come back to my example also, because I want to say like this. You see, there's two kinds of damages. One damage is, like when you go to the farmer's market. I saw an interview with somebody. He said he has to have all the broccolis all wrapped in paper, and they have to be many of them and look beautiful. Because if one is a little bit, bent or something, nobody will buy it. Is there any difference when you steam it? No, there's no difference. But people want their thing to look in a certain way. So when you have things for schora, then all of a sudden, a small damage, which would not categorize it otherwise That same hammer, if it would be your own hammer, it wouldn't be a klisha malachtola isser. I mean, klisha asur machmat chesron kis. Because there's no chesron kis that somebody hammers in another nail with your hammer. But when people are buying hammers, they see one that's a little bit scratched and one that's not, they'll take the one that's not scratched. So you're more particular about your schora being pristine. Even, so you got, well, the problem with the example of the safety wrapper is that that's something external. I'm going to say even internally on the item, even the item itself gets a small damage that normally wouldn't put it into the category of chesron kis because nobody's makpid about their hammers. But for new hammers, they are. So the Rambam puts that in there, schora. And what else does he leave out that Rashi had?
A place, a storage place.
Exactly, a storage place. He doesn't say miyached lo makom. So we can say that there's already a machloket rishonim, whether you need to miyached lo a place or not. The halacha is going to be like the Rambam. You don't need to miyached lo. It doesn't need to miyached a place. It could be that Rashi never really meant that as a criteria that is, what do you say in philosophy, necessary. It is not a necessary criteria, but it's a sign of it's just a sign of your hakpada.
It's not necessary, but it might be sufficient.
It might be, no, that's an interesting question. Is it sufficient? Because what if I have something that I always put in a certain place, but it's a hammer? I always keep my hammers in my hammer drawer. I keep my screwdrivers in my screwdriver drawer. I'm very, what is it? I'm OCD.
The implication, right, is that like it's not just this as the usual place that it rests between uses, right? Like obviously, yeah, I have my silverware drawer, I have my whatever, and like I take them out and then I use them, right? But if it's a place that like I keep this thing in this area and I don't frequently move it and use it.
Question is, why do you keep it in that area? If you keep it in that area because you don't want it to get damaged, then it's chesron kis. Right. It's not enough that you keep it in an area. Well, we'll see. What about like a grandfather clock? I always keep it in a certain spot. Is the, I also don't use it for cracking nuts probably. But okay. Question? Yeah, Ori, you have a question?
Yeah, I just don't think that in that Rashi that it's really a condition that could add something if the reason he's giving doesn't apply. Meaning he gives the reason clearly, or
exactly right. That's what I was trying to point out. It's not sufficient. Exactly. I don't think Lexi was saying it's sufficient. I don't think it's sufficient. Sufficient means that's enough of a reason. It's not enough of a reason to just you miyached it, because I could miyached all kinds of things to places. It requires another. It's not sufficient. It's necessary. It requires one of the other necessary conditions, which is that it's not chazi lemalacha achrita lacheret or in general that you're kapid alei. Anyway, it's interesting Rashi. I'm not saying that there should be a machloket here, but some read it as a machloket. Okay. Now we didn't discuss. Let's look at the Gemara quickly in Kuf Gimel, Kuf Kaf Gimel Amud Bet. I'm going to be going. Keep everything open in front of you. We're going around. So yeah, let's keep that place. Kuf Kaf Gimel Amud Bet, and that's where we see the Rashi. And maybe I'll just read it quickly. It's really, we just saw it. Rav Yossi Omer, Kol HaKelim Nitalin Chutz Min HaMasar HaGadol, big saw, V'yated Shel Machresha, and the plows spike. I guess it was a removable spike. And then the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman, Hi Uchla, the Katsir. What is that? That's a clothes washer's fork. Uchla de katsir, some kind of fork that they use, I guess, to lift the clothes out. Ki yated shel machresha. It's the same din as this spike of the plow. Damya. Amar Abaye, harva de ushkapi, which is a cobbler's knife, like for making shoes, a special knife. V'sakina de ashkabta, and a slaughterer's knife. V'chatzina de nagri, and a carpenter's adze, or I don't know how you pronounce that, as or ads, I don't know. It's like a hoe. It's like a hoe-shaped thing that they would lift and scrape the wood. Ki yated shel machresha dami. They're like the same din as machresha. And then we have this Gemara, which is a historical Gemara. Or really, I guess we're saying that these are the only things that are muktzeh, right? Just these things. It's a little bit weird because these things, right? It says again, Rabbi says, kol hakelim nitalin chutz min, these things. Everything is not muktzeh except for these things. If I would just read this Gemara, I would say that nothing is muktzeh except for like these tools that I don't have. I don't have these tools, right? I don't have any of these tools. I don't have a slaughterer's knife or. So therefore, nothing is muktzeh. So that would be great. So what do you have to say about this part that we read, actually, before the historical Gemara? You have to say, what do you have to say? That this is, what kind of list is this? What is the list of what?
Have a particular type of muktzeh thing, such as maybe muktzeh machma chesron kis.
Right. Exactly. So look. First of all, look at Tosfos. Look at Tosfos. Mikzoah shel devela. Yeah.
I think you could say something else, which is kind of what the Beit Yosef says, which is the list of things that are completely muktzeh. You can never move them. Period.
Well, that's the same thing as Hesron Kis. Hesron Kis, you can't move completely.
Yeah, but we haven't had that definition yet, right? In other words, these are the things. Everything else isn't really muktzeh. It's like there.
Isn't that what Jacob said?
Oh, maybe it is. Sorry, Jacob. That's what you're saying. It's
I thought that's what
you're saying. This is only the list of things that are chesron kis. Is like it's only one category.
Oh, there's only one. Not that there's only that. There's no other categories you could say, but not. Maybe one category, or it's a list of that. Either we know about other categories or we don't, but this is a list of that category. Wait, let's look. Before we go on, let's look at this Mikzoah shel devela. Even though we didn't see it in our list, this is like kind of like saw for cutting dried figs, I think. It says, Tosfos says, Lo chashiv ela kelim delav b'nei kibul. I don't know. Wait, yeah. So actually, where's that? Where's that thing? Where is this quote from? Mikzoah. I didn't check that.
We didn't get up to it yet. It's after Bar Rishona.
It's after. So fine. So Mikzoah shel devela. Lo chashiv ela kelim delav b'nei kibul tahapshita de kosot v'karot. Okay, we're talking about different lists. I'm sorry, this is later. We didn't get there yet. But so there's a different Tosfos. The first Tosfos, Sakina de Ashkabta, which is that which is that thing?
A butcher, not you said a shechet earlier, but it's a butcher according to Tosfos.
Okay. I said a slaughter. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it's the butcher.
Perish bekontras, sakin shakatzavim, the knife that the butchers mikatzin ba basar, that they cut up meat with. V'yesh mefarshim sakin sheshochatin ba. Now there was this word. What it means could mean a butcher's knife, and it could mean a slaughterer's knife. You see, if you say it's the first one, that it's a butcher's knife, then you're less makpid about that. So it would be a broader category. Tosfos is saying, no, it's a more narrow category. It's only this special kind of knife for slaughtering. Oh, here he says you can't move it afilu l'tzarech gufo, and certainly not for what? In other words, even for the tzarech gufo to use it, like say to cut a cucumber, you can't. But also for what not else?
So Gufo is like for its own sake, like to save
You
it.
can't even move it for its own sake. That's the but he uses the word afilu. When you use the word afilu, you mean to say there's another thing that I'm not mentioning that's even more obvious.
Let's say to protect.
You could say Mechama Litzel. You could say that. What other possibility could you say? What other reason do you have for moving things? Makomo. So we'll see that the Beit Yosef understands this Tosfot here as indication that that Mikomo is a lesser of a category. In other words, is less likely to be allowed than Gufo. We might permit Gufo, but we certainly wouldn't permit Mikomo. Gufo means you want to use it. You might say, well, I want to use this thing, so let me use it. But moving it just to stop move it, that for sure you can't do. Just because you want its place. Okay, we will. That's a whole other thing about Rabbi Shimon. Fine. All right, let's go back to the Beit Yosef. Beit Yosef is my friend today. I mean, he's always my friend, but we're going, sometimes last time I talked, we talked a lot about the Magen Avram. This time I want to talk a lot about the Beit Yosef. So where are we? So wait, back to what Jess was reading. We just basically saw what Jess was reading inside. We didn't see the Kuf Nun Zayin. Anyone look over the Kuf Nun Zayin? What is the case of the Chesron Kis? We talked about, we said over there in the Gemara in Kuf Nun Zayin, it talks about arazeh v'ashuche, which are two kinds of wood that are both from an erez tree, from a cedar. A male, Rashi says a male cedar and a female cedar. I don't know about, there are trees that have male and female, but I don't know if cedar is one of them. But there's a special wood that's expensive. And not only that, the Muktzeh machmat chesron kis, and it says there, it's Muktzeh machmat chesron kis. That's the term is used in the Gemara. Perhaps the only place is referring to. Anyone can tell me if they saw it somewhere else, but I think that might. I didn't really search, but I think that might be the only place in the Gemara. That's where the term chesron kis appears in the Gemara, and it's referring to these wood that is chesron kis. Now, I see in this, does anybody agree with me that I see in this a source for the Rambam Schora? Because we didn't see a source for the Rambam Schora. Do you see, anyone understand why I see this as a source for Schora?
It's not necessarily even a Kli in this case. And
right, it's not even a Kli. It is expensive, perhaps, but what kind of damage are you going to do to it? In other words, if you move it around, let's say you want to use it to block the door so that nobody can come into at nighttime when you go to sleep. So you move this thing, you're not going to do much damage to it. So why should we muktzeh it? Why should, right? In other words, it's not like a butcher's knife. It's not even like a butcher's knife. It's certainly not like a moil's knife. It's something very large. It's beams for building a house, and a little scratch in it is not going to take any damage, any value away from it. Really, or maybe a little bit. But you see, this is the case that's called Chesron Kis. Ironically, this case in the Gemara is called Chesron Kis, and it doesn't seem like the normal concept of Chesron Kis.
That's why I wasn't even sure in the Rambam, the way that you brought out Lischora, because all of his examples are Kalim. They're really all professional workers, Kalim, and that was really consistent with the other Rishon.
Well, he says, or Schora. Schora. I don't think he gave a list of schora. When in schora, I think it was anything anything that you have in the category of schora, and maybe it's because maybe it's just because you don't want to. You've set it aside. You weren't planning on touching it on Shabbat. It's sort of out of your world.
It's in the Rambam. He says
kelim.
So that's why I really felt like his list afterwards. It's all very unified, and it seemed unified with Rashi too, because it's very professionalized tools. That yes, they get resold also frequently, so it makes sense to him to combine those categories. It's like in your tax form. I know in my tax form.
How often do you sell plow spikes?
As a video maker, I can tell you that on my tax form, if I have a camera that can be used for my business, it has a special status, right? So this resonated for me. Like there are certain
let's be clear. Schora is what you have an otsar. You have a stock room filled with stuff, and that stuff is all kinds of things that you don't use because you don't want your clients to think it's been used.
I'm just saying he did limit it to kelim, and that's why it made it sort of.
You're right. Okay, I agree with you. Kelim is. You're asking. You're being kasha. You're being makshe on me. I understand, but I do see a little bit the idea that
now you're using the kit, which is I think the right terminology, something that is used without necessarily a scratch. You know, you drive the car out of the dealer's lot, it's worth half of what it was worth when it was there with the dealer. And if you would return it, you can't return it because it's been used. So used just means used without any necessary damage.
Right. But, right. Okay. Rashi says about these wood, she'omdim lebinyan. He doesn't say anything about it being damaged. It sounds like it's omdim lebinyan, and you're not going to use it to burn fire on Yom Tov, for example. You're not going to use it for some other purpose. You're not going to take these valuable cut boards. I mean, unless it's like, Stalingrad, in 1944, you're not going to burn your nice wood to keep yourself warm. It has a much more valuable use. So it's also muktzeh. I mean, you could say it's muktzeh midato, but everything's muktzeh midato. It's something that's not in your mind to use. It's okay. Anyway, that's the other Gemara that the Beit Yosef brings. Let's go back to the Beit Yosef, just so you understand what he's talking about. So he says like this. I'll read a little bit, where it says the Kuf Nun Zayin in parentheses. Amrinan shezeh nikra muktzeh. Notice how he writes. Amrinan shezeh. This whole category is called chesron kis. Va'afilu Rabbi Shimon modeh. Rabbi Shimon, there's a big machloket between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that there's such a thing as, in one way of reading it, in the most straightforward way, let's say it like this, I'll say it simple. Rabbi Shimon is more lenient about muktzeh, and Rabbi Yehuda is more machmir. In fact, you could almost say that Rabbi Shimon says there's no such thing as muktzeh except for a few cases. So here, afilu Rabbi Shimon's modeh, that chesron kis, that is muktzeh. Uba Gemara kaf gimel, like again, Amar Abaye. Harba de ushkafi, the sakina, these are what we saw. The ashkabta, the chatzina de nagri, ki yated shel machresha dami. Uperish Rashi, harba de ushkafi, sakin shel ratzanin. I think that means a knife of a shoe person. The sakin de ashkabta, sakin shel beit hamakolin. Shakatzavim mikapsim bo basar. So that's a butcher's knife. V'chatzina dolai dora kolhani kapida alayim mishum demifgame b'miktsas mishum demifgami, because they are possibly damaged. These are all delicate items. They're delicate. That's, I think, the best word. Muktzeh lahu biyadayim. What does that mean? Muktzeh lahu biyadayim. Or I think it means miyadayim. He doesn't use them.
I think it's not meyadayim. It's that like this person, rather than it being something that is like, oh, they don't think about it, or like it happens. It's that like you actively set this aside, right?
Thank you. You're right. Yes. You make an action like the raisins that you put on your roof. You didn't just think that they're. You put them in a special place to say they're set aside. You set them aside. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Lex. Vatosfot that we read. Okay, we will skip that. V'ken nami shel mila. I just skipped a line. V'kasav arosh. V'ken nami sakin shel mila. The izmil, which is a chisel, shel sfarim of bookmakers. The sakin shel sofrim, and a knife that the scribe uses, shemek taknim behen akulmusin, that they cut the feathers with it. It's a very sharp knife. Kevan shemakpidim, and here there's a note to add a mem here. Kevan shemakpidim mila asot behem tashmish acher, since people are careful not to use it for any other purpose, asur l'tal talam b'Shabbat. You can't move them on Shabbat. Fine. So these are the kinds of things that you can't move. For kasav Rambam perakaf hey v'zeh lishono kol kli shemakpid alav shema yifatchu damav. This is the Rambam that we read. Kagon kelim hamuktzim lischora, the ones that are the items. I would translate kelim, or things that are maybe vessels that are set aside for sale. The kelim yikarim biyoter shemakpidim aleihem shema yifsedu asur l'tal talam b'Shabbat. You can't move them on Shabbat. V'zehu anikra muktzeh machmat chesron kis kagon hamasar gadol v'chule. That's the Rambam. V'Rava Magi katav b'perek kaf vav halacha yudal. In other words, not on this Rambam, but on a different Rambam. He says gabe otzar shel tevuah. She'im yesh lo kelim hamuchanim l'schora v'hutzrach lehem mutter l'tal talam. You could move them. You could actually. So he's actually arguing on the Rambam. He's saying if you have kelim, right, muchanim l'schora, you set them aside for schora, and like Lexi said, biyadayim, you put them in a special room for schora. But you need them now. You can go in that room and move them. I'm not exactly sure which example he's talking about, but he says it's a kol shekain from fruit that you could also eat. I guess you could also remove it if it was for schora. Shehutru afilu ba'achila. You could eat them. Ad kan l'shana. So he says, if you can eat the fruit, then certainly you can do this. So here's a machloket. The Magi is arguing on the Rambam, which is unusual, kind of, or maybe it's not unusual. V'ken mashma mikarki dezuzi. This is in the Gemara in Yud Tet. The ita besof perak kama. Did anybody look this up? This is actually an important case. These are mats for a boat cargo. These karki de zuzi are like sort of mats that they would put all the cargo in the boat, let's say, and then cover it with the mat and maybe keep it from rolling around or something. Some kind of mats. And what about those? What about those mats? They're muktzeh. So wait a second. We just said ubasof. Wait a second. Let's look at that. I don't remember it perfectly. Yud, look at Yud Tet in the Shabbos, in the Gemara Shabbos. Yud Tet. Amud Bet. It's right in the middle of the page. The first one line is Hani Karki. Rav Asar Ushmul Sari. Shari. Rav forbid and Shmuel permitted. Rav Asar, if you look at Rashi, Rav Asar, why did Rav Asar? Rashi says, Rav Asar l'tal tulei mishum muktzeh, because they're muktzeh. So Rav held that these mats are muktzeh, because they're for like schora. Nobody's going to take their boat out on Shabbos, so they're schora. The Rav Savar ke Rabbi Yehuda, because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, not like Rabbi Shimon. B'muktzeh. Ushmul Savar ke Rabbi Shimon, but Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon. The leis le muktzeh. Look how Rashi writes it. Joel, notice this. The leis le muktzeh. He doesn't hold of muktzeh. That's the way Rashi says it, not just here, but also in another place. Shmuel, it says like Rav Shimon says there's no such thing as muktzeh. But it really doesn't mean that. It really means there's many cases where there's not muktzeh. Vahachi amrinan b'mi she'echshi. That's and that's a different Gemara. The truth is, the actual Gemara that you need to know for understanding this is in, I think it's in Mem Hey. We don't have to go there, right? I'm just checking quickly. I think it's Mem Hey. Yeah, and Mem Hey is where it says Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ein Muktzeh. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Ein Muktzeh the Rabbi Shimon El Grogrot V'Tzimukim Bilvad. In the Gemara in Mem Hey, we have this statement that Rav Shimon only holds that there's muktzeh of grogrot and tzimukim on the roof, right? That you're drying the raisins. That's it. Okay, back to the Gemara in Yud Tet. So,
Nachum, you made me, when you looked at Mem Daled though, you see that phrase that Rashi said, Delet le muktzeh.
Yeah.
He Delet le muktzeh. That's actually in the Gemara and Mem Daled Amud Bet, right in that same section.
Yeah. So Rashi's quoting the Gemara. Fine.
Right, like a way of looking at Rav Shimon.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Yeah, so Rav Shimon holds there's no muktzeh, but it doesn't really mean it literally. You got to say it doesn't mean it literally.
Or does he mean it about that case as opposed to saying it like in general?
Okay, but let's go back to you. Let's go back to
if I recall correctly, I think this might be helpful. Rabbi Shimon never has a direct quote that is like, I don't think there's any muktzeh. Right? There's like both with Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda throughout Masechet Shabbat. There's like these paradigmatic debates of theirs that the Stam plays out that are like based on particular rulings of them in a couple cases that are then extrapolated into broad principles, right? Like Rabbi Shimon doesn't say Devar.
I just read you a pretty good quote on Daf Mem Hey that he says, "Ein muktzeh." I mean, it's not. Again, you're right. It's not that it's not Rav Shimon Omer, but it's said about him that he doesn't have muktzeh. It's in the Gemara. It's not a Rishon.
Gemara. That's the Gemara talking about him, right? That the Gemara.
No, it's not the Stam. You said it's a Stam. It's not the Stam. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel.
Sorry, the Amoraim and the Stamaim about Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda extrapolate various principles that they hold and make those as like paradigms throughout the Masechet. But like most of those principles, we don't see Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda like verbatim say like, I don't think there's any muktzeh, which I think the fact that these are like then later attributed to them is part of why we also get some of the inconsistencies of like, we'll make this broad principle and then we're like, oh, we have to, it actually doesn't apply here, right?
Well, that's why, yeah, exactly. That's why I hedged my bets and I said, let's just say he's more lenient about muktzeh. But the Gemara does say it, and like Ori said, even the Gemara says it says it's late le muktzeh. Anyway, this is this case over here in Daf Yud Tet. And Rashi says, what is this? What is this mats? They covered up the schora in the boat with it. And okay, so what is the Beis Yosef going to do with that? There's also a Tosfot here which I want to look at, but what is the Beis Yosef going to do with that? Yud Tet. He says, back to the Beis Yosef. Where are we? So we just got through saying that the Magid says, what did the Magid say?
He says schora is not muktzeh, right?
That schora is not muktzeh. And then we say, the ken mashma. So why is it mashma mekarchi? Why is it mashma mekarchi? We just said it's a machloket over there. Wait a second.
Rabbi Shimon, because we said Rabbi Shimon, though, he holds that there is muktzeh chesron kis. Therefore, he clearly doesn't hold that schora is chesron kis from this, right? The Rabbi Shimon is right.
Well, okay, I could learn the opposite. I could say this is chesron kis, but Shmuel is shari, and Shmuel is paskening like Rav Shimon, and we paskin like Rav Shimon. The halacha is like Rav Shimon, and therefore you're allowed to move schora, even if you call it chesron kis. Whatever you want to call it, you can move it. I mean, if you need it.
Yeah, but I think once you call it chesron kis, you can't move it. Period. That's the whole thing. That's Rabbi Shimon agrees, right? And we paskin like that. You can't move it at all. But if you call it but obviously this isn't chesron kis because Shmuel says it's mutar, right?
Well, whatever schora is, whether it's chesron kis or not, Rambam says it is chesron kis and you can't move it, and the Magin says, well, it's schora and you could use it. And he doesn't say that it's not chesron kis, but maybe he doesn't say it is either. Okay, but the point is that you see here that these mats, which are dealing with our schora, you could move them. So that's another proof, like the Magid. And he says, Ubasof perak misha echish, that Rav Shimon permits, and that's the halacha. V'gam lefi ma shepirshu atosfot sham, besof perak kama, divra matchil hani. That's the Tosfos that on Yud Tet. So let's go back there again. Let's look at the Tosfot again. So look at the Tosfos here. Who wants to read this Tosfos? Back on Yud Tet. I thought we could get away without looking at it right now, but it's the next thing. And here we're going to see those other two categories. Remember I said there's two more categories of mi'us. And what's the other one? Two categories that Beit Yosef left out. Mi'us and Isser. Who would like to read that hasn't read? And that wants to read a Tosfos they haven't read before? Joel.
I'm always happy.
Oh, okay. If Ori wants to do it, if otherwise I'll do it.
I don't mind. I'll if I get lost.
Go ahead. You have a lot of leeway because we don't expect much. We don't expect you to know everything.
Exactly. I don't know this Tosfos. Hani karchi dezuze Rav Asar letaltel mishum Muktzeh. Tema de beperek.
Tema. First of all, you got to stop. Tema.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't make sense.
Questionable. Yeah.
Wait a second. So again, Hani karki dezuze Rav Asar letaltel mishum Muktzeh v'tema. They should be mutter to move. Why? Go ahead.
The beperek mefanin amrinan the Rav the Muktzeh leachila savar lak Rabbi Yehuda. The Muktzeh letaltel savar lak Rabbi Shimon.
Oh, so wait, so let's explain that.
Okay, so there, I don't know that more, but there, they explain that
again. Who says it's usher? What's his tema? His tema is how could Rav himself usher? Because we have this other Gemara where Rav says, where we say about Rav at least, that he holds like Rav Yehuda. Whenever you see Rav Yehuda, that means Machmir. He holds Machmir. What?
They called it the Muktzeh la'achila.
No. Somewhere like to Rav Yehuda can la'achila, right? In other words, you can't eat the schora. You can't eat even though actually the Maggid said you could eat it, but that's because we hold like Rav Shimon. But Rav holds like Rav Yehuda. He holds like Rav Yehuda that you can't eat it. But
So for
exactly. But as far as moving the items, you could move them. You could move them even though they're schora. Again, we're dealing with this whole question. The Rambam brings in schora. Rashi didn't mention anything about schora. The Rambam paskins that schora is muktzeh machmat chesron kis, and as Joel said, maybe it isn't. And now we're saying that maybe it isn't. That he should be certainly, even if you're machmir like Rav Yehuda. Even if Rav is machmir like Rav Yehuda, he isn't like Rav Yehuda as far as moving it. You should at least be able to move it.
Right. And here he's not even letting you move it in the case of karki dezuze.
Perfect. And what does Rebbe Denu Tam answer?
The Rabbeinu Tam, the karki dezuze, hen muktzeh machmat mius. This is actually muktzeh machmat mius.
Oh, it's a different category.
כגון בגדים ומחצלות שמכסים בהם דגים ושאר דברים המלכלכים אותם. So they may be related to schor, but they also have mius because
you're putting in your old fish in it, and now this is a smelly old mat, and it's disgusting, and so you can't move it, not because of chesron kis, which would be allowed, but would be not allowed mius. Mius is more strict than chesron kis.
Wait, didn't we say even Rabbi Shimon is the chesron kis you can't move on Shabbos and then Kuf Nun Zayin, right?
The what?
Rabbi Shimon thinks for chesron kis you can't move it, right? This is some other category of muktzeh.
Which chesron kis? What Kuf Nun Zayin?
On Kuf Nun Zayin, when the term chesron kis, right? Hatam ka'arze v'ashuche de muktzeh machmat chesron kis afilu Rabbi Shimon modeh, right?
Oh. Yeah, true. So why are we comparing it here? Why are we bringing it in here?
I don't think he thinks it's anything about. I don't think the Tosfot think this is about chesron kis at all, right? They're like, there's category one of muktzeh that
it's just a new category called schora.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just a category called schora, and we're trying to figure out what the din is. Okay.
Could Rabbeinu Tam be saying that, right, the principle we had before was about either ochel or metaltalin. Could Rabbeinu Tam just be saying that mius doesn't fit into either of those, and so you can't apply that framework of
ochel? Mius could apply to ochel. Why couldn't mius apply to ochel?
Sure, but I'm saying, is it possible that, like, as a stock phrase, muktzeh machmat mius doesn't fall into what we said about Rav the Muktzeh la'achila savar.
Well, I'm not sure I understand you. I mean, we're saying a very simple thing. We're just saying that everything that we said about Rav talking about Rav holding like Rav Shimon for moving, and like Rav Yehuda, that was about things that are edible, but not things that are not edible. Things that are not edible, we don't know what he says. Maybe he holds like not like Rav Shimon, like Rav Yehuda Lagamre. Maybe he holds entirely like Rabbi Yehuda, regarding things that are not edible, that are muktzeh machmat mius. Even even if Rav Shimon maybe permits muktzeh machmat mius, but maybe Rav doesn't hold like that. All right, we're getting too much into the thickness of the weeds here. Just I wanted you to see that Rabbeinu Tam says that this case is a case of muktzeh machmat mius, and therefore the rule that we had over in that Gemara or in our Gemara in Kuf Kaf Chet doesn't apply because that was talking about food substances and not about things that are me'us, that are disgusting. And then he brings another case, V'hada Amar Perak Batra, the Afrav Svira Lake Rabbi Yehuda, Midekarke de Zuze, de Rav Asar, and he hold like Rabbi Yehuda, Mifarish Rabbeinu Tam, de Nevela Hamitnabelet b'Shabbat. Oh, that was the case I was mentioning in the beginning of class. A nevela that is dies on Shabbos. Muktzeh machmat iser. That's the eighth category. Muktzeh machmat iser. Who? The af leklavim eino ra'ui, because you can't give it to dogs mechayim. When it's alive, you can't give a live animal to the dogs. That you need to cut it up. Muktzeh machmat iser. And why is it muktzeh machmat iser? Because you can't shecht it on Shabbat. Muktzeh machmat iser chamur mimachmat mius, and that's even more strict. Okay, I really just wanted to show you that there's a couple of categories there. What is the Beit Yosef going to do with this? Let's go back to the Beit Yosef. What did the Beit Yosef do with this? He says this is also a source that schora is permitted, because the only reason that the mats are forbidden is because they're muktzeh machmat mius. But if they would be schora, I mean, if they would be like something not mius, it would be permitted. So why does the Rambam say schora is aser? So where are we? We're
Mikol makom shita lehu to the Rabbi Shimon.
Mikol makom, yeah, okay. So read. So you want to read there, Ori?
Sure. Mikol makom shita lehu to the Rabbi Shimon. To the Rabbi Shimon. Afilu bekelim hamiuchadim liiska let lei muktzeh. Right. So according to Rabbi Shimon, even kelim that are special for business, that are intended for business. Does he mean schora here, or does he mean tools?
No, he means no. The iska, the schora. He means the schora.
The schora. Let lei muktzeh. V'tzarich lomar dehad katav Rambam.
In other words, he's saying that the Rav Shimon holds that the schora is late is not muktzeh. I think that's what it means, schora. I think it means schora. Go on. V'tzarich lomar.
Dehad katav Rambam dekelim hamuktzim lischora asur l'taltalan. Hainu davka kishemakpid aleihem shema yifsedu. Right, so when you read the Rambam, he's talking specifically about kelim hamuktzim lischora. That's only in the case where he's makpid aleihem.
So he's saying the Rambam didn't really mean it. Not all schora is aser. We spent a lot of time talking about that, about how it's new, so you go on. Umishum hachi.
Mishum hachi afal pisha enam yikarim biyotzer. And even if they're not particularly expensive, kevan shehem muktzim lischora asur taltalam. Because they're set aside to be sold, there you can't carry them. Dishemakpid aleihem, because that's a case where he's makpid aleihem because of this issue of schora. Shema yifsidu, maybe they'll lose some value.
No, now let's put this in quotes. Shema yifsidu is a quotation from the Rambam.
Mm-hmm.
The Katani that the Rambam wrote.
Okay. All right, so Shema yifsidu the Katani kai gam lekelim hamuktzim lischora.
Right. It's not any kelim l'schara. It's ones that you're worried that they will yifsedu. And when the Rambam wrote at the bottom, Shema yifsedu, that was going on not just the kelim ayakarim, but also on all the schara. Ha'im, we go on.
Ha'im eino makpid aleihem, afal pi shehem muktzim l'schara mutar taltalam. U'chedivrei Rabbi Magid. So he's making them all work. It works out together because he's making the Rambam more specific. It's specifically kelim muktzim lischora that you're makpida aleihem that are going to be muktzeh.
Right.
But if they were muktzim lischora and you were not makpid aleihem, then that you would be allowed to.
Right. So the one factor is that you're makpid.
So that becomes the dominant
Rush.
category. Doesn't matter if it's clear or anything else. You're makpid, you're makpid. In other words,
Right.
clear
I
is
would
not
say
exist-
that there's a
clear is not
larger.
existing as an individual category.
Right,
Let's say
exactly.
that.
But there's two reasons why you might be makpid. One reason why you might be makpid is because the item itself is essentially fragile, and the other reason you might be makpid is like we were saying all along that it's chora, that you're makpid because you want it to be pristine when you sell it, but not because it's essentially it would broaden the items that you would include in this kind of muktzeh. Because it's not just a person who sells butcher knives and mila knives. It's also a person who sells other kinds of things that normally wouldn't be considered chesron kis, but he's makpid on because they're for schora. And then you have to say the cases in the Gemara maybe where you're not makpid on them, like fruits maybe. Here, so let's stop here before it says v'katu atosva. We'll take a break. I see that it's past our time. So let's take a break for 4 minutes.